At 2:13 on a rain-soaked Thursday morning in South Chicago, Adrian Vale kicked open the door to apartment 4C and found the one woman he had trusted with every secret in his empire bleeding to death on a cold bathroom floor. Lena Hart lay curled against the bathtub, one hand pressed against a knife wound beneath her ribs, the other wrapped so tightly around a black flash drive that her knuckles had turned white. Her dark auburn hair clung to her pale face. Blood stained the cream blouse she had worn to work less than 12 hours earlier. For one terrible second, Adrian did not move. He had walked into rooms filled with armed men without hesitation. He had stood over bodies, negotiated with killers, and watched powerful men beg for mercy without feeling his pulse change. But the sight of Lena struggling to breathe made something inside him go violently still. Lena. His voice came out lower than he intended. Her eyelids fluttered. She tried to focus on him through the pain, and when she finally recognized his face, relief softened her expression for half a heartbeat. "You came yourself," she whispered. Adrian dropped to one knee beside her. "Who did this?" She ignored the question and caught the front of his jacket with blood-slick fingers. "Your wedding isn't an alliance." Her breath broke. Adrian pressed his hand over the wound, trying to slow the bleeding. "Don't talk. It's your funeral." Her phone lit up on the tile beside her. A message filled the screen. "Bring the drive to the ceremony or Margaret dies." Adrian read it once. Then again. Margaret was Lena's mother. The one person in the world Lena would burn everything to protect. He looked back at her, but her grip had already gone loose. "Lena." She did not answer. For the first time in years, Adrian Vale felt something dangerously close to fear. 72 hours earlier, Lena Hart had been sitting at the end of a polished walnut conference table, while 8 powerful men argued over a problem she had already solved. The top floor of Vale Maritime overlooked the Chicago River, all steel, glass, and quiet money. Rain pressed against the windows, while executives blamed customs officials, dock unions, and one another for a shipment of medical equipment being held at the port of Savannah. Every hour of delay cost the company nearly $500,000. Roman Vale, Adrian's uncle, slapped a folder onto the table. "We pay lawyers for this. The lawyers are the reason it's still sitting there," Lena said. The room went quiet. Roman turned slowly toward her. Lena was used to that look. Men like Roman often forgot she was present until she said something they could not ignore. She sat beside Adrian in a fitted ivory blouse and a dark green pencil skirt, her full figure elegant and unmistakably feminine. She had warm hazel eyes, softly curved features, and the kind of beautiful face people noticed only after making the mistake of dismissing her. "Is there something you'd like to add?" Roman asked. "The shipment was classified under surgical machinery," she replied. "It should have been filed as emergency diagnostic equipment under the disaster relief exemption signed last month. Correct the category, attach the governor's emergency declaration, and customs has to release it." One executive frowned. "That exemption applies only to hurricane affected counties. Savannah's receiving warehouse serves 3 of them." Lena slid a page across the table. Paragraph 7. Silence followed as the men read. Adrian did not look at the document. He looked at Lena. "How long will the correction take?" 20 minutes, if legal stops arguing with me." A smile almost touched his mouth. "Then legal has 15. Roman leaned back, visibly irritated. "It's still clerical work." Adrian finally turned toward him. At 42, he had the kind of face that looked carved rather than born. Sharp cheekbones, steel gray eyes, dark hair that never stayed completely disciplined, and a thin scar near his jaw that became more visible when he was angry. His charcoal suit was perfectly tailored, but his rough hands and bruised knuckles told a different story. "She just saved this company $8 million, he said quietly. "Call it whatever helps you sleep." The meeting ended 6 minutes later. Lena gathered the abandoned folders while the executives disappeared toward lunches, phone calls, and expensive cars. Adrian remained at the head of the table, watching rain crawl down the glass. "You embarrassed my uncle. He survives disappointment remarkably well." That wasn't criticism. She glanced at him. It rarely is with you. His gaze dropped to the slight tear near the cuff of her blouse. What happened? Lena looked down. Nothing. That wasn't my question. For a moment, she considered lying. Adrian had an irritating ability to recognize when she was hiding something, even though he rarely asked enough questions to discover why. The sample dress for the rehearsal dinner arrived, she said. Vivienne ordered the wrong size. His expression changed almost imperceptibly. By accident? Of course. Lena. She closed the folder in her hands. It was 2 sizes too small, Adrian. She apologized. I survived. You shouldn't have had to. The words were simple, but something in his tone made her look at him. For 6 years, Adrian had defended her value in boardrooms, trusted her judgment in negotiations, and placed more information in her hands than he gave members of his own family. But concern from him always arrived disguised as irritation, a practical problem to be fixed before anyone noticed it mattered. Lena had learned not to mistake protection for intimacy. Vivienne Cross entered the conference room before either of them could say more. She wore winter white from collar to heel, every detail polished, from her blonde hair to the diamond at her throat. She was beautiful in a way that seemed designed for campaign posters and society pages. There you are, she said warmly to Lena. I heard about the dress. I feel terrible. It's fine. It isn't. I gave my assistant the wrong measurements. Vivienne touched Lena's arm lightly. I'll have another delivered tonight. Her smile was perfect. So was the apology. That was what made it impossible to challenge. Adrian watched the exchange without speaking. Vivienne turned toward him and kissed his cheek. Your wedding planner is threatening to resign because you still haven't approved the reception security. Lena has the file. Vivienne laughed softly. Of course she does. Does anything in your life exist outside her desk? The remark sounded playful, but Lena felt the edge beneath it. Adrian's eyes stayed on Vivienne. Very little worth finding. Something flickered across Vivienne's face before the smile returned. By late afternoon, Lena had corrected the Savannah filings, rescheduled 3 meetings, approved floral invoices, and prevented 2 members of Adrian's security team from starting a fight with a city inspector. At 6, most of the building emptied. At 8, the cleaning crew arrived. At 10, Lena was still at her desk outside Adrian's office, reviewing the final wedding logistics. Adrian emerged with his tie loosened and his sleeves rolled to his forearm. The look made him seem less like the chairman of a shipping company and more like the man whispered about in private clubs from Chicago to New York. Go home, he said. That sounds less like concern when you say it as an order. Would concern work? It would be unfamiliar. He rested one shoulder against the doorframe. Your mother's appointment is tomorrow. Lena looked up. She had mentioned it once, 3 weeks earlier. You remembered. You put it on my calendar by mistake. I did not. Then I remembered. The admission hung between them. Lena looked away first. On the corner of his desk, she had left a bottle of his father's favorite whiskey. The anniversary of Daniel Vale's death was the next day. She never spoke about it. Neither did he. They had built 6 years of loyalty out of details neither of them acknowledged. After Adrian left, Lena opened the wedding budget one final time. At first, nothing looked unusual. Flowers, catering, cathedral fees, transportation, private security. Then she noticed a payment labeled Marine Contingency Adjustment. It was too large to be incidental and too vague to be legitimate. She followed the vendor code into a secondary ledger. 3 more payments appeared, all connected to the private vessel scheduled to host the reception after the ceremony. The crew had been replaced. The emergency route had been changed. The communications officer had been reassigned. Lena's exhaustion vanished. She opened the insurance documents. Adrian was listed as the primary insured party. In the event of his death within 30 days of the marriage, temporary voting control of Vale Maritime would transfer under the new succession agreement. The destination field had been encrypted. Lena entered a password only 4 people knew. The name appeared, Vivienne Cross. Lena stared at the screen. It could have been a legal provision, a precaution, something Adrian had approved without telling her. Then she found the authorization attached to the crew replacement. It carried Adrian's biometric code. She knew it was false, because she had been standing beside him at the recorded time. inside a federal courthouse where all electronic devices had been sealed in security lockers. Someone had copied his authorization. She reached for her phone, ready to call him, then stopped. A second file showed deleted security footage from the executive floor. The deletion had been performed using Ethan Cole's credentials. Ethan had protected Adrian since they were teenagers. If his access had been compromised, Lena could not trust the building's internal network. She could not trust the security office. She could not even know whether a call to Adrian would reach him privately. She copied the files onto a flash drive and slipped it into her purse. The hallway outside her office was empty. On her monitor, a message appeared without a sender. "You should have left this alone." Lena froze. A second message followed. "Check your mother's room." Her hands began to shake. She called the rehabilitation facility directly. No answer. She called Margaret's nurse. Voicemail. Then the office lights went out. The next morning, Lena's desk was empty for the first time in 6 years. Her phone had been disconnected. Security footage showed her leaving the building with restricted files. An international flight had been booked in her name. $200,000 had appeared in an offshore account tied to her social security number. By noon, Roman was standing inside Adrian's office, demanding permission to send men after her. "She stole internal records 3 days before your wedding," he said. "There is nothing to investigate." Adrian stood behind his desk, staring at the frozen image of Lena on the security screen. She looked over her shoulder before entering the elevator. Not guilty, afraid. "There is always something to investigate." Roman's mouth hardened. "Your judgment is compromised. Choose your next sentence carefully." Vivienne sat near the window, composed and sympathetic. "Roman is angry, but he isn't entirely wrong." Adrian turned toward her. "You believe Lena betrayed me?" "I believe good people can become desperate." Vivienne rose and walked closer. "Her mother's treatment is expensive. She had access. Maybe someone offered her a way out." "She would have asked me." Vivienne's expression softened. "Would she?" "Lena is proud, and she knows how much you trust her." She paused. "You don't have to hate her to admit she used you." For one brief, poisonous moment, Adrian wondered whether she was right. Then he entered Lena's office alone. Her coffee mug still sat beside the keyboard. Her calendar was filled for the next 4 weeks. A birthday card for Margaret rested inside a drawer beside a pharmacy receipt. On the corner of the desk was a wrapped wedding gift addressed to Adrian and Vivienne. People planning to vanish did not leave behind the medication their mother needed the next morning. Lena might hide pain. She might carry danger alone. But she would never abandon Margaret. Adrian found her address in a personnel file and drove there without security. By the time he reached apartment 4C, rain had darkened the streets and blood had dried beneath the door. Minutes later, he was kneeling on the bathroom floor with Lena unconscious in his arms and a threat against her mother glowing beside them. He carried her into the hallway just as footsteps thundered up the stairs. Ethan appeared at the landing, one hand beneath his coat. Adrian drew his gun before Ethan reached the final step. "Stop," Ethan did. His eyes moved to Lena, then to the blood covering Adrian's shirt. "How did you find us?" Adrian asked. "I followed the man watching this building. Your credentials erased the security footage." "I know. Give me one reason not to put a bullet through you." Ethan slowly raised both hands. "Because if you take her to any doctor connected to the Vale family, she'll be dead before sunrise." Somewhere below them, a car door slammed. Ethan looked toward the stairwell. And whoever attacked her just realized she survived. The car door slammed somewhere below them, followed by the muted growl of an engine starting in the rain. Ethan glanced toward the stairwell. "We have less than a minute." Adrian kept the gun leveled at his chest. "You used your credentials to erase security footage. Someone used them. That distinction may save your life later." Adrian tightened one arm around Lena's unconscious body. "Right now, it doesn't earn my trust." Ethan's jaw flexed, but he did not argue. "Then trust the men downstairs. They're not here to help her." As if summoned by his words, the building's front door crashed open. Heavy footsteps entered the lobby. More than one man. Adrian looked down at Lena. Her face rested against his shoulder, blood soaking steadily through the towel pressed beneath her ribs. Every second he stood there demanding answers was another second she might not survive. "Where?" he asked. "Private trauma house in Bridgeport. No veil contracts. No cross money. The doctor owes me." "That is not reassuring." "It's what we have." Adrian lowered the gun by an inch. Ethan immediately moved ahead of him, drawing his own weapon as he checked the stairs. "Back exit," he said. "They'll expect the front." The rear staircase smelled of rust and damp concrete. Adrian carried Lena downward while Ethan cleared each landing. On the second floor, a shadow appeared through the narrow window in the fire door. Ethan fired once. The glass shattered, and the figure dropped from view. "Move." Adrian did not ask whether the man was dead. He stepped over broken glass, shielding Lena's head beneath his coat as they crossed the alley. Rain struck them hard, washing diluted blood from Adrian's hands. A dark SUV waited with the engine running. Ethan opened the rear door. "Get in." Adrian laid Lena across the seat and climbed in beside her, never taking his hand from the wound. Ethan drove. Behind them, two black sedans burst from the opposite end of the block. "We're being followed," Adrian said. "I noticed." Ethan cut through a yellow light and turned sharply beneath the train tracks. Lena shifted against Adrian's arm, a faint sound of pain escaping her. "Stay with me," he said. Her eyelids fluttered but did not open. Ethan watched them through the mirror. She was attacked less than 6 hours ago. Adrian's gaze snapped up. "How do you know?" "The blood pattern, the body temperature. And because the man I followed left her building shortly after 8, you watched him leave and waited until now?" "I followed him because I thought he would lead me to whoever ordered it. Then you arrived and ruined the plan." Adrian's voice turned dangerously calm. "Choose your words carefully." "I'm trying to keep her alive, Adrian. You can punish me after." The safe house stood behind a shuttered neighborhood clinic with no sign above the door. A gray-haired physician named Dr. Samuel Reeves met them inside, wearing surgical scrubs beneath an old cardigan. He took one look at Lena and began issuing orders before asking names. Adrian carried her into a narrow treatment room and refused to leave until the doctor physically pushed him away from the table. "Unless you know how to repair internal bleeding, get out." Adrian stared at him. "Save her. That is what I am attempting to do." The door closed in Adrian's face. For 43 minutes, he stood in the hallway with Lena's blood drying black across his shirt. Ethan remained near the entrance, gun resting against his thigh. Neither man spoke until Adrian finally turned. "Start at the beginning." Ethan exhaled slowly. "Yesterday morning, I received an anonymous message saying Lena was being framed and that the executive security system had been compromised." "From whom?" "No name." The message included a copy of the footage showing her leaving with the files. The same footage everyone saw. No, the original. In the real version, she wasn't alone. Adrian's expression hardened. Who was with her? The camera angle never showed his face. Large build, dark coat, Vale family ring on his right hand. Roman wore the old family signet almost every day. So did several senior men who had served Adrian's father. "Why erase the footage?" Adrian asked. "I didn't. I tried to isolate it before anyone else saw it. Someone locked me out and used my credentials to replace it with the edited version." Ethan reached into his coat slowly and placed his phone on a metal table. "I kept one frame." Adrian studied the image. Lena stood inside the elevator, shoulders rigid. A man's gloved hand rested against her lower back, not guiding her, controlling her. On the finger was a heavy silver ring marked with the Vale crest. "You should have come to me." "I tried. Roman intercepted me outside your office and said you were with Vivian's attorneys." "And you believed him?" "No. That's why I followed the man leaving Lena's building." The treatment room door opened. Dr. Reeves removed his gloves. The blade missed her liver and the major artery by less than an inch. She lost a dangerous amount of blood, but she slowed it herself with pressure and packing. Adrian's shoulders loosened by a fraction. Will she live? If the wound remains clean and she does not tear the stitches by behaving like an idiot, probably. When can I speak to her? When she wakes. For no more than 5 minutes. Adrian moved toward the door. Reeves blocked him. She also has bruising around both wrists, a mild concussion, and signs she was drugged. Whatever questions you have can wait until she knows where she is. They threatened her mother. Then protect her mother. Do not interrogate my patient." The doctor held Adrian's stare until, surprisingly, Adrian stepped back. Lena woke 2 hours later beneath a thin wool blanket. The room was dim except for a small lamp near the bed. Adrian sat in the chair beside her, now wearing a clean black shirt someone had found in the clinic storage room. The sleeves were too short, exposing old scars along his forearms. Lena tried to move and immediately winced. "Don't," he said. Her eyes found his. Confusion passed through them, followed by memory. "My mother." Lena struggled to sit. Adrian placed one hand carefully against her shoulder. "I said she's alive." "Where is she?" "Being moved." Lena went still. "Moved where?" "Somewhere secure." "By whom?" "My people." Anger sharpened her exhausted face. "Your people are the reason I'm here." Adrian removed his hand. "Ethan chose the team himself. That is not an answer. It is the only one you're getting until Reeves clears you." Lena stared at him. Even pale and weak, she did not look intimidated. "You cannot move my mother without asking me. Someone threatened to kill her. That doesn't make her one of your assets." Adrian's eyes darkened. "It makes her a target. And you think the solution is to move people around like pieces on your board. I think the solution is to keep them breathing." Her voice lowered. "That is exactly why everyone is afraid to tell you the truth." The words struck deeper than she intended. Adrian leaned back, his face unreadable. "Why didn't you tell me?" Lena looked toward the ceiling. "Because I didn't know who I could trust." "You could trust me." She turned back to him. "Could I?" "Yes." "The files were tied to your wedding. Your uncle's authorization appeared on one transfer. Ethan's credentials erased the footage, and your future wife had legal control of your company if you died." Adrian's jaw tightened. "You still should have come to me." "And said what? That your chubby assistant believed the beautiful woman you were about to marry was planning your murder?" His expression changed. Lena continued before courage failed her. "Do you know how that would sound? Jealous, bitter, convenient. I would have believed you. Would you?" The silence that followed was brief, but not brief enough. Lena's eyes softened with hurt. "That is what I thought." Adrian stood and walked to the window, though the blinds were closed. "I came for you, after the evidence was already against me. I came anyway, because something felt wrong. Because you never broke a promise in 6 years." He turned back toward her. "Because you left your mother's medication on your desk. Because your calendar was full for next month. Because guilty people run from consequences, Lena. You were running toward something." Her anger weakened, replaced by exhaustion. "I was trying to get proof. You nearly died getting it. And you nearly died because I didn't." Ethan entered carrying the damaged flash drive and Lena's laptop. Adrian's attention shifted immediately. Her mother? Transport changed routes twice. No tail so far. Lena pushed herself higher against the pillows despite the pain. "Let me see the drive." Adrian looked at her. "No, I encrypted it. You were stabbed." "Those facts are unrelated." Ethan almost smiled, then thought better of it. Adrian crossed his arms. "The doctor said no work. The doctor also thinks you have normal blood pressure." Lena held out her hand. "Give it to me." 20 minutes later, the laptop rested on a tray across her knees. Lines of code moved slowly across the screen as Lena attempted to reconstruct the damaged sectors. Her fingers trembled from weakness, but her concentration remained exact. Adrian stood on one side of the bed, Ethan on the other. Several folders appeared. Most were corrupted. One opened long enough to reveal offshore payments routed through shell companies in Delaware, Nevada, and the Cayman Islands. Another contained security schedules for the wedding reception vessel. A third showed an authorization code linked to Roman Vale's private office. "Roman," Ethan said. Adrian remained silent. Lena enlarged the transaction. "His code is attached," Ethan replied. "So is my social security number on an offshore account. That does not make it mine." She opened the audio fragment. Static filled the room, followed by several distorted words. A woman's voice, perhaps. Then the file collapsed. Lena tried again. There's a wedding contract clause hidden in the transfer instructions. What clause? Adrian asked. Temporary control upon death within 30 days of marriage. Vivienne. Yes. Lena's gaze stayed on the screen. But Roman authorized access. Either he is working with her or someone wants us to believe he is. A phone vibrated in Ethan's pocket. He answered and listened without speaking. His face changed. Margaret's transport has been compromised. Lena's hands stopped above the keyboard. What does that mean? A vehicle has followed them through 3 route changes. Where are they now? Heading toward the Lakeshore Rehabilitation Center. Lena stared at him. Why are they taking her back there? They aren't. The driver is using it as a decoy destination. Ethan listened again, then swore under his breath. The second vehicle just cut them off. Lena shoved the laptop tray aside. Pain ripped through her side, but she swung her legs over the edge of the bed. Adrian caught her before she could stand. You are not going anywhere. My mother is out there. Ethan will handle it. Ethan's access was compromised. Then I will handle it. Lena gripped his forearm. You don't know her schedule. You don't know the staff. You don't know where she hides things when she's afraid. You can tell me. And waste time explaining every detail while someone takes her? Adrian's voice hardened. You cannot walk. Then carry me. Dr. Reeves argued until Adrian threatened to take Lena without medical supplies. 10 minutes later, she was seated in the back of a reinforced sedan with fresh bandages, pain medication, and strict instructions that no one believed she would follow. Adrian sat beside her. Ethan drove. The attackers are not tracking phones, Lena said, fighting through dizziness. My mother's transport schedule was never entered into the Veil system. Who had access? Ethan asked. Her nurse. Me. The rehabilitation office. She closed her eyes, thinking. And Roman's charitable foundation. It covers part of the facility. Adrian looked at her. You never told me that. I never told you many things. The answer carried no accusation this time, only sadness. When they reached the rehabilitation center, the front entrance was unlocked and the lobby was empty. A television played silently above the reception desk. Lena recognized the night administrator's purse beneath the chair, but the woman was gone. This is wrong, she whispered. Adrian drew his weapon. Ethan moved toward the security room. I'll restore the cameras. No, Lena said. They want us separated. Ethan looked at Adrian. Adrian nodded once. They remained together. Margaret's room was empty. The bedsheets had been pulled back, and a wheelchair sat near the window. On the desk was a clipboard bearing Lena's forged signature, authorizing Margaret's release to a family representative. Lena touched the ink. This was printed from an old medical form. A sound echoed from the service corridor beyond the laundry room. 3 slow taps. A pause. 2 more. Lena's expression changed. That's her. Adrian looked at her. You're sure? When I was a child, she used that knock when the power went out. They followed the sound into the basement corridor. Margaret sat inside an unlocked supply room, frightened but unharmed. Lena crossed the distance too quickly, nearly collapsing as she knelt beside her. Mom. Margaret touched her daughter's bandaged side and went pale. What happened to you? I'm all right. You have never been convincing when you lie. Adrian turned toward the hall as a faint scrape sounded behind them. Lena saw the gunman first, reflected in the glass panel of a cabinet. Adrian! Ethan spun, raising his weapon directly toward Adrian's chest. For one suspended second, every piece of evidence seemed to become true. Then Ethan fired past him. The gunman behind Adrian dropped, his weapon skidding across the floor. Ethan lowered his pistol. You're welcome. Adrian looked at the dead man. Then at Ethan. We'll discuss your timing later. Margaret, still holding Lena's hand, glanced between them. Are all your meetings like this? Lena let out a breath that was almost a laugh. Inside Margaret's crossword book, beneath a page filled with unfinished answers, Lena found a small brass key. It opened a locked compartment in the base of the wheelchair. Inside was a notarized copy of the succession agreement and a handwritten list of payment codes. Adrian read the first page in silence. If he died within 30 days of the marriage, temporary voting control of Vale Maritime would transfer directly to Vivienne Cross. Roman's signature authorized the clause. Ethan looked over Adrian's shoulder. "There's your traitor." Lena shook her head. "There's one traitor." She pointed to the date beside Roman's signature. This agreement was drafted 3 weeks before Roman gained access to the wedding account. Adrian understood immediately. Someone designed the plan before recruiting him. Back at the safe house, Margaret slept in the room across the hall while Lena sat wrapped in a blanket near the fireplace. Adrian placed a cup of tea beside her. "Reeves says you tore 2 stitches. Reeves enjoys being right. You nearly collapsed twice, but I didn't." Adrian sat across from her. For a while, neither spoke. Finally, Lena said, "My father left when I was 14. Not suddenly. Slowly. First he stopped coming home for dinner. Then he stopped asking about school. Then one day he stopped returning calls." Adrian watched her carefully. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because after that, I learned something. People leave when you become inconvenient. So I made myself useful." Her fingers tightened around the blanket. "Useful daughters are harder to abandon. Useful employees are harder to replace. Useful women do not have to ask anyone to stay." Adrian's face softened in a way few people had ever seen. "I never would have abandoned you." Lena looked into the fire. "You didn't have to leave me, Adrian. You just never came close enough to know when I was drowning." The room fell silent. Beyond the window, rain moved across the city in silver sheets. Adrian had answers for armed rivals, federal investigators, hostile boards, and men who wanted him dead. He had no answer for the woman sitting 6 feet away from him. If every piece of evidence pointed to someone you loved, would you trust the evidence or 6 years of their character? Tell me what you would have done. By 9 the next morning, Adrian had decided the wedding would continue exactly as planned. The announcement traveled through Vale Maritime within minutes, followed by relief, confusion, and one carefully measured reaction from Roman Vale. He entered Adrian's office without knocking, wearing a navy suit and the silver family ring he had inherited from Adrian's grandfather. "I heard you made the sensible decision." Adrian stood near the windows overlooking the river, one hand in his pocket. "Did you expect another one?" Roman smiled faintly. "For a moment, yes. Because of Lena. Because grief makes men unpredictable." Adrian turned just enough to study him. "You seem certain she is dead." The smile remained, but something behind it tightened. "Your security team said she disappeared after stealing from us. I assumed the streets dealt with her before we could. An unfortunate assumption. Was it wrong?" Adrian held his gaze for a long second. "Does it matter?" Roman's answer came too quickly. "Not anymore." He stepped closer and lowered his voice. "The Cross Alliance protects everything your father built. Whatever attachment you had to that woman cannot interfere with the future." Adrian's expression did not change. "Attachment?" "She was useful. Loyal, perhaps. But people like Lena forget their place when they are allowed too close to power." Adrian's hand curled inside his pocket. "And what place is that?" "Behind the person who owns it." Adrian looked back toward the river. Then she understood power better than most men at this company. Roman left without realizing that Ethan had recorded every word from the adjoining room. Lena listened from the safe house, seated at a desk. Dr. Reeves had repeatedly ordered her to avoid. Her face was pale, but the bruising around her wrists had begun to fade. Margaret slept nearby under guard. On the screen before Lena, Roman's image disappeared as the office door closed. "He knows something," Ethan said through the encrypted line. "He knows enough to be afraid," Lena replied. "That is not the same thing." Adrian entered the private conference room and shut the door. For a moment, neither he nor Lena spoke. The silence between them still carried the weight of the previous night. "You just never came close enough to know when I was drowning." Adrian had not slept after hearing it. Lena could see that in the hard line of his mouth and the shadow beneath his eyes. "Roman accepted the bait," he said. "He thinks the wedding protects him. Then let him believe it. You should be resting. You should stop saying that as though repetition will make me obedient." Ethan looked between their faces on 2 separate screens and quietly removed his earpiece. I'll inspect the cathedral security. Adrian waited until Ethan was gone. You were right. Lena's fingers stopped over the keyboard. About what? I did not know you were drowning. She looked away. That was not an invitation for guilt. I know. Do you? He stepped closer to the camera, his voice lower. I knew what time you arrived every morning. I knew which contracts you hated, which executives made you angry, and how you tap your pen twice when you think someone is lying. I knew you kept peppermint tea in the second drawer because coffee makes your hands shake after midnight. Lena looked back at him. Then why does none of that feel like knowing me? The question landed between them. Adrian's expression softened, but before he could answer, Vivian entered his office. She wore a fitted black dress and carried 2 coffees. I hope I'm not interrupting. Adrian minimized the video window before she could see Lena. You are. Vivian smiled, as though he had made a joke. Your uncle says you are determined to go through with the ceremony. Is that a problem? It is the first good news I've heard in days. She placed 1 coffee on his desk. I have been worried about you. Because of Lena? Because someone you trusted betrayed you. Adrian watched her carefully. She is dead. Vivian's hand paused above the cup. The reaction lasted less than a second. I'm sorry. Are you? Of course. She moved closer, her voice softening. She made a terrible choice, but I never wanted her harmed. Adrian said nothing. Vivian touched his wrist. At least she cannot ruin anything else. Silence followed. I am my. RMI. She made a terrible choice. Her eyes shifted. I mean, she cannot damage the company further. I understood you. He allowed her hand to remain there. Across the hidden audio connection, Lena heard every word. Vivienne moved closer and kissed him. It was not a passionate kiss. It was practiced, elegant, and strategic. Adrian did not respond at first. Then, because Roman's office camera was likely watching, and because Vivienne had to believe the deception, he placed 1 hand at her waist and returned it. Lena removed her earpiece. 10 minutes later, Adrian called the safe house. Lena did not answer. He called again. On the 3rd attempt, she appeared on screen without the audio device. The performance was convincing, she said. It had to be. I know. Then why did you disconnect? Because listening was no longer useful. Adrian stared at her. You do not owe me an explanation, Lena continued. That is the problem, he said. I want to owe you one. Her expression changed, but she quickly controlled it. Wanting to explain yourself is not the same as being ready to tell the truth. What truth? That you are willing to perform tenderness when strategy requires it, but not when it might cost you something. Adrian's jaw tightened. You think I feel nothing? I think you feel more than you allow yourself to name. She looked back toward the laptop. And right now, we have more important problems. The damaged audio file had recovered another 7 seconds. Lena played it twice. A woman's distorted voice spoke over static. The words were unclear, but beneath them came a low metallic chime. 3 notes, a pause, then 3 more. Ethan returned to the call and listened. A clock? No, Lena said. A bell. She replayed it. Vivienne's family chapel has a 6-note prayer bell. I heard it during the engagement dinner. Adrian's eyes narrowed. The recording was made on cross property, or someone wants us to think it was. Lena extracted the audio frequency and matched it against a video from the engagement ceremony. The sound was identical. This is not proof, she said, but it gives us a place to look. That afternoon, Adrian met Vivienne inside a private lounge at the Cross estate. Lena guided him through a concealed earpiece while Ethan monitored the perimeter. The room was lined with portraits of senators, judges, and businessmen whose names had shaped Illinois politics for generations. Vivienne poured whiskey and watched Adrian over the rim of her glass. You have been distant. My assistant stole from me and died before I could ask why. Perhaps she was afraid of what you would do. Were you? Vivienne smiled. Should I be? That depends on whether you have lied to me. She placed the glass down. No secrets, Adrian. Not between us. She moved closer and rested her palm against his chest. After tomorrow, Everything we have becomes one. Through the earpiece, Lena whispered, "Ask about the revised succession agreement." Adrian did. Vivienne did not hesitate. A standard protection clause drafted by our attorneys. Roman signed it. Your uncle approves dozens of documents without reading them. And temporary control transfers to you. Only if you die. She smiled again. Are you planning to? The conversation revealed nothing conclusive, but as Adrian turned to leave, the chapel bell rang in the distance. The same 6-note pattern played in Lena's headphones. She closed her eyes. That is it. Then a message appeared on her laptop from an encrypted address. I can prove Roman ordered the attack. Come alone if you want Adrian to survive. The location was a closed restaurant near the river. Lena stared at it. She knew it could be a trap. She also knew whoever sent it believed Roman was the story Adrian wanted to hear. She did not tell Adrian. 2 hours later, Lena entered the darkened restaurant wearing a long charcoal coat over her bandages. She had a transmitter sewn into the lining and a pistol Ethan had left inside the safe-house cabinet. The dining room smelled of dust and stale wine. One table had been set beneath a hanging light. Vivienne sat alone, dressed in red. You came, she said. You threatened my mother. Curiosity was never the issue. Vivienne's smile faded. I did not threaten Margaret. Then prove it. Vivienne poured water into 2 glasses. Roman ordered your attack. He has resented Adrian for years. He believes Adrian destroyed the old rules by trusting outsiders, attorneys, women. Her gaze settled on Lena, especially you. And you expect me to believe you are innocent? I expect you to understand what it means to survive powerful men. Vivienne leaned back. My father arranged my education, my relationships, and now my marriage. Roman controls Adrian through blood. They both believe women exist to make their power easier to manage. You are marrying Adrian willingly. I am marrying the only man strong enough to protect me from my father. Lena studied her. Some of the fear in Vivienne's voice sounded real. That made her more dangerous, not less. You and I are more alike than you want to admit, Vivienne continued. We both spent years making powerful men successful. The difference is that I stopped waiting for gratitude. I never asked for gratitude. No, you asked for nothing. That is worse. Vivienne's eyes sharpened. You call it loyalty because admitting it is love would make you feel foolish. Lena held her gaze. And you call it power because admitting you are afraid would make you feel weak. For the first time, Vivienne's composure cracked. Hurt appeared, raw and genuine. Then it vanished. Adrian will never choose you publicly, she said. Men like him marry women who look right beside them. They depend on women like you in private. Lena's voice remained steady. I am both. Your mistake was believing I needed him to confirm it. Vivienne smiled slowly. That confidence would be more impressive if you were not transmitting every word to him. Lena's blood went cold. Vivienne reached beneath the table and placed a small signal jammer beside the glasses. The light on Lena's hidden transmitter died. You are clever, Vivienne said, but you still think evidence is the weapon. It isn't. Timing is. Across the city, every alarm inside the safe house activated at once. Lena stood. What did you do? Vivienne lifted her glass. I gave you exactly what you wanted. A confession. Shaped distraction. Lena ran. By the time she reached the safe house, one guard had been shot, and Margaret was being loaded into another vehicle under Ethan's protection. Adrian stood in the driveway with blood on his knuckles and fury in his eyes. You went alone. I thought she would reveal Roman. You thought wrong. She contacted me directly, and you decided no one else deserved to know? I made a calculated risk. One of my men may die because of it. The accusation struck hard. Lena looked toward the ambulance where the wounded guard was being treated. I did not know she had found the house. You keep saying that as if ignorance erases consequence. Her face hardened. And you keep calling control protection. I cannot protect someone who refuses to stop walking into danger. I never asked you to protect me. You are alive because I found you. The words left his mouth before he could stop them. Lena went completely still. Adrian's anger vanished. Lena, no. Her voice was quiet. I am alive because I survived long enough for you to finally look. She turned and walked toward Margaret's vehicle, one hand pressed against her side. Adrian did not follow. Later that night, in a hotel room secured under another name, Lena reviewed every word Vivienne had spoken. The confession about Roman was too clean. The emotional argument had been designed to keep Lena engaged. Even the insult about her appearance had been chosen to provoke her. Then Lena noticed one phrase. Timing is the weapon. The same wording appeared in the final revision of the succession agreement. Control shall transfer according to the timing provisions listed herein. Only 3 people had received that revision. Adrian, Vivienne, and the officiating attorney who had died in a highway collision 8 days earlier. Lena searched the document metadata. The author's signature had been scrubbed, but one embedded recovery path remained. V-Cross, legal, private. Her hands stopped moving. She traced the path into archived cloud records and found the rest. Vivienne had created the offshore account in Lena's name. Vivienne had paid the man who attacked her. Vivienne had altered the security schedule. Vivienne had drafted a second agreement eliminating Roman 6 months after Adrian's death. Roman was guilty, but he was never the architect. At dawn, Lena entered Adrian's temporary command room and placed a folder on the table. He looked as though he had not moved all night. You were right, she said. I should have told you before I went. Adrian stood. I should never have said, we can apologize after we survive tomorrow. She opened the folder. Roman sold her access. Vivienne designed everything. Adrian read the files, his expression growing colder with every page. We cancel the wedding. No, he looked up. If you cancel now, she destroys the original records and leaves the country before sunrise. We have enough to expose her, not enough to control what happens next. What are you suggesting? Lena held his gaze. You can stop the wedding now and let her disappear. Or you can stand at that altar and allow her to believe she has already won. Adrian studied her for a long moment. And where will you be? Lena closed the folder, exactly where she never expected to see me. At 11:47 the next morning, the bells of St. Augustine Cathedral began to ring over downtown Chicago, deep and solemn beneath a sky the color of gunmetal. Black sedans lined the curb. Federal judges, aldermen, shipping executives, union leaders, and men whose names never appeared in public records moved beneath white awnings while armed security watched from behind tailored coats. Reporters crowded the barricades across the street, shouting questions about the marriage that was supposed to unite 2 of the most powerful families in the city. Inside the cathedral, thousands of white roses climbed the stone columns. Gold light burned across the altar. Every detail suggested permanence. Every person involved knew the marriage might not survive the hour. Adrian stood alone in a private chamber behind the sanctuary, fastening the cuffs of a black suit Lena had once told him made him look more dangerous than respectable. He had almost smiled when he remembered it. Almost. Ethan entered without knocking and closed the door behind him. The original security detail has been replaced. My people control the north entrance, the service corridor, and the lower level. Crossmen? Adrian asked. Still positioned at the west doors. They think they are part of the operation. Roman? In the front pew, pretending he owns the building. Vivienne? Calm. Ethan paused. Too calm. Adrian adjusted the watch at his wrist. And Lena? She entered through the archive tunnel 12 minutes ago. Adrian looked at him. She should not be here. You knew she would be. Knowing and approving are different things. Ethan gave him a tired look. That distinction has caused most of your problems with her. A knock sounded before Adrian could answer. Roman entered wearing a dark, formal suit and the Vale family ring. He dismissed Ethan with a glance, but Ethan did not move until Adrian nodded. When they were alone, Roman approached with the confidence of a man who had spent decades believing he understood every weakness Adrian possessed. Your father stood in this same room before he married your mother, he said. He was more frightened than he admitted. Adrian looked toward the old mirror above the fireplace. Were you with him? I was always with him. Even at the end? Roman's expression barely shifted. Especially then. Adrian turned. Was he afraid when he realized the man beside him had already sold him? Silence entered the room. Roman's eyes became colder. Be careful. You taught me that men reveal themselves when they believe they have nowhere left to run. Adrian stepped closer. Today, I wanted to see whether you remembered your own lesson. Roman's hand moved slightly toward his jacket. If you knew anything worth knowing, this wedding would not be happening. Perhaps that is why it is. The cathedral music began beyond the wall. Roman studied Adrian for another second, then smiled without warmth. Your father's greatest failure was believing restraint made him honorable. No, Adrian said. His greatest failure was trusting you. Roman left, but not quickly enough to hide the fear in his eyes. On the opposite side of the cathedral, Vivienne Cross stood before a three-paneled mirror while her father adjusted the diamond clasp at the back of her neck. Her ivory gown fit her perfectly, structured and severe rather than romantic. She looked less like a bride than a woman being crowned. Roman is nervous, Damien Cross said. He always has been. He may break. Then let him. Vivienne lifted her bouquet. A tiny transmitter hidden beneath the ribbon sent every word to Ethan's receiver. After Adrian signs, Roman becomes unnecessary. Damien smiled. You sound like your mother. No. She waited 30 years for men to give her influence. I learned from her mistake. And Lena? If she survived, she will come. You seem confident. Vivienne looked at her reflection. Women like Lena cannot resist the chance to be seen. That is why invisible people are so easy to control. Offer them one public moment, and they will walk into any room you choose. The processional began. Guests rose. Adrian walked toward the altar through a sea of faces, hearing none of the whispers around him. He remembered another doorway 6 years earlier, when Lena Hart had entered his office for an interview wearing a navy dress, carrying a folder too tightly, and refusing to apologize after Roman made her wait for 2 hours. She had been nervous, but she had looked him directly in the eye. Your filing system is inefficient, she had said before he offered her the job. No one had spoken to him that way in years. He had hired her before the meeting ended. Vivienne appeared at the far end of the aisle. Cameras flashed through the stained glass light. She smiled as she walked toward him, beautiful, poised and entirely certain of victory. Damien placed her hand in Adrian's. Her fingers were cool and steady. You look troubled, she whispered. I was thinking about loyalty. A dangerous subject today. Only for the disloyal. The officiant welcomed the guests. Prayers were spoken. Promises about honor and unity echoed through the cathedral. Adrian heard Ethan's voice through the nearly invisible earpiece beneath his collar. Federal team is 2 minutes out. Hold position. Vivienne recited her vows with flawless emotion. She spoke of partnership, courage, and building a future stronger than either family could create alone. Several guests wiped tears from their eyes. Adrian watched her and wondered how many times she had practiced the expression. Then the officiant turned to him. Adrian Vale, do you take Vivienne Cross to be your lawful wife? The cathedral became silent. Adrian did not look at the officiant. He looked directly at Vivienne. Before I answer, he said, I need my bride to explain why she paid a man to carve a confession into my assistant's skin. A wave of sound moved through the pews. Vivienne's fingers tightened around her bouquet, but her face remained composed. Damien Cross rose halfway from his seat. Roman did not move at all. Vivienne gave a small, wounded laugh. Adrian, this is not the place. You chose the place. I do not know what grief has done to you, but Lena Hart stole from your company and disappeared. She was abducted. According to whom? According to the woman who survived. The main doors opened. Every head turned. Lena stood at the entrance beneath the towering archway, dressed in a deep burgundy wrap dress that followed her soft, full figure with quiet elegance. Her dark auburn hair fell in loose waves over one shoulder. The bruising at her wrists had not completely faded, and pain still pulled at her face when she moved, but she did not look fragile. She looked composed, beautiful, unafraid. For 6 years, most people in that cathedral had passed her desk without learning her name. Now no one could look anywhere else. Vivienne's expression finally cracked. That is impossible. Lena walked down the aisle slowly, one hand resting against her side. Adrian took a step toward her, then stopped when she gave the smallest shake of her head. This was not a rescue. It was her entrance. Vivienne recovered first. "There she is," she said loudly enough for the room to hear. "The loyal assistant who always wanted the bride's place." Lena reached the front pew and faced her. "No, I wanted the truth to have one." Damien moved toward the aisle. Ethan appeared from the side entrance with 2 security officers and blocked him. "Sit down." Vivienne turned back to the guests. "This woman has been obsessed with Adrian for years. She used her access to create false accounts, steal confidential files, and sabotage this marriage." She nodded toward one of her attorneys. The cathedral screens lit up. A signed confession appeared beside bank records, showing $200,000 in Lena's name. Next came security footage of her leaving Vale Maritime with restricted documents. Finally, a series of private messages filled the screen. "He will never see me while she is there. I have given him 6 years. She does not deserve his name." Whispers spread through the cathedral. Several faces turned toward Lena with renewed suspicion. Vivienne watched her carefully. "Your own words." Lena studied the messages. "No. My sentences." Vivienne's smile returned. "Is there a difference?" "Yes." Lena stepped closer to the altar. "The first line came from an email I wrote about a promotion given to an executive who stole my work. The second came from a performance review. The third was part of a legal memo regarding your family's claim to the Vale name. You removed the context and assembled them into a confession." She looked toward the screen. "Just as you copied my signature from my mother's medical authorization." The confession enlarged. Lena pointed to the final stroke in her name. "I stopped signing my name that way after injuring my wrist 2 years ago. The medical form you copied was filed through cross-family insurance." Vivienne's eyes hardened. "Convenient. So is your mistake in the bank account." Lena nodded to Ethan. A new document replaced the confession. The offshore account was opened using my social security number, but the recovery email belonged to a temporary server created through cross-legal services. The device signature matches the tablet you used to revise the succession agreement. Damien Cross stood. "This is absurd." Lena turned toward him. "Then perhaps you can explain why the man who stabbed me received $75,000 from a shell company managed by your office." Another transaction appeared. Vivienne's composure began to erode. "Roman authorized that payment." Every eye moved toward him. Roman rose slowly. "She is lying." "Am I?" Lena asked. "You sold access to Adrian's biometric records. You approved the crew replacements. You opened the internal security network. But you did not design the plan." Roman looked at Vivienne. Something like understanding entered his face. Lena continued. "Vivienne promised you control of Vale Maritime after Adrian's death. But 6 months later, a second agreement transferred your shares to Cross Holdings and removed you from the board. The second contract appeared on the screen. Roman's face drained of color. "You said the company would be mine." Vivienne turned on him. "You were useful." The word echoed more loudly than she intended. Roman stared at her. "You planned to remove me. You helped murder your own nephew for a chair at a table you were never strong enough to lead." A different silence filled the cathedral. Adrian looked at Roman. What did she mean? Roman's gaze shifted toward the exits. "Nothing." Vivienne laughed bitterly. "Ask him about your father's final route. Ask him who disabled the security escort the night Daniel Vale was killed." Adrian's face became completely still. Roman's hand moved inside his jacket. Ethan shouted, "Gun!" Chaos erupted. Roman drew a pistol, but one of the guards near the west door drew at the same time. Adrian moved in front of Lena as the first shot struck the stone column beside the altar. Guests screamed and dropped between the pews. Ethan fired toward the guard while Roman ran for the side aisle. Lena reached beneath the minister's podium and pressed the emergency security control she had installed during the wedding planning. Steel barriers dropped over the side exits. The cathedral doors locked with a heavy mechanical crash. Roman reached the north corridor and found it sealed. Adrian followed him through the smoke and shouting. Roman turned, weapon raised. "Your father was weak," he said. "He would have surrendered everything to protect you." Adrian stopped 10 feet away. "And you killed him for it." "I saved the family from him." "No. You spent 20 years convincing yourself betrayal was leadership." Roman aimed at Adrian's chest. Ethan fired first. The bullet struck Roman's shoulder and spun him to the floor. His weapon slid beneath a pew. Adrian approached slowly, but he did not touch him. You do not get to die before answering for him. At the altar, Vivian seized Lena's injured arm and pulled her backward. Pain flashed through Lena's side, but she remained standing. Vivian held a small blade against her ribs. You think this makes you powerful, Vivian whispered. You are still the woman who waited 6 years for him to notice you. Lena met her eyes. And you are still the woman who destroyed everyone around her because she could not imagine power without ownership. You could have stood beside me. No, I could have become you. Vivian pressed the blade closer. He will never love you enough to change. Lena's voice remained calm. Then I will leave him. The certainty in her answer startled Vivian. That hesitation was enough. Lena twisted her wrist, drove her elbow into Vivian's shoulder, and stepped away as Ethan's officers surrounded them. Vivian lunged once more, but Adrian caught her arm before the blade reached Lena. His grip tightened until the weapon fell to the marble floor. The main doors opened moments later as federal agents and financial crimes investigators entered with warrants prepared from the evidence Lena had delivered before sunrise. Damian Cross was detained near the front pew. Roman was carried out under guard. Vivian stood between two agents, her wedding veil torn and her expression stripped of every practiced softness. She looked at Adrian one last time. You are choosing an assistant over an empire. Adrian turned toward Lena. No, he said. I am choosing the woman who saved it from people like you. Outside, reporters shouted from behind the barricades as the guests poured onto the cathedral steps. Adrian stepped toward the microphones, but Lena remained several feet behind him. He looked back at her, then moved aside so she could stand beside him. For 6 years, he said. Vale Maritime treated Lena Hart's loyalty as an unlimited resource. I allowed it. Every person who benefited from her silence, her labor, and her sacrifice, including me, will answer for that. The cameras turned toward Lena. She did not smile. Later, when the cathedral had emptied and the flowers were already being removed, Adrian found her alone in the side chapel. She sat beneath a carved stone window, one hand pressed carefully against her bandaged side. You tore the stitches again, he said. Probably. I asked you to stay hidden. You ask many things. He stood in front of her. Stay with me. Lena looked up. I do not mean tonight, he continued. I mean at the company, at my side. I will create any position you want. Full authority, equity, your own division. She listened without interrupting. I should have given you that years ago, he said. I should have seen what you were carrying. I should have... No. The word stopped him. I will not accept power as an apology, Lena said. And I will not spend the rest of my life wondering whether you value me or feel guilty because I bled for you. This is not guilt. Maybe not. But you do not know what it is yet. She stood slowly. Neither do I. Adrian's expression tightened. What are you saying? I am resigning. He looked as though she had struck him. I saved your life, Lena said, but I cannot build mine around managing yours. I need to know who I am when I am not organizing your meetings, protecting your company, and waiting for you to notice what I never had the courage to say. I notice now. That is not the same as being ready. He could have ordered guards to stop her. He could have used money, obligation, or fear. 6 months earlier, he might have believed keeping her close was another form of protection. Instead, he stepped aside. When do you leave? He asked. Today. Will you tell me where? No. Pain crossed his face, but he nodded. Then I hope you find what I failed to give you. Lena paused at the doorway. What is that? Freedom to choose me. 3 months later, Lena Hart sat behind a desk bearing her own name. Hart Strategic Risk occupied the 6th floor of a restored brick building overlooking the river. The office was smaller than Adrian's and louder than the Vale headquarters. Lena loved it immediately. She had 12 clients, 4 employees, and enough contracts to turn away anyone who treated her expertise as clerical work. Her mother's care was funded through compensation. She owned her company outright. The trials had only begun. Roman faced charges connected to Daniel Vale's murder as well as the wedding conspiracy. Damian Cross's political network was collapsing under federal investigation. Vivian had refused every plea agreement offered to her. Vale Maritime survived. Adrian had separated the legal company from the old criminal structure, appointed independent oversight, and removed executives who had enabled Roman's culture of intimidation. He did not contact Lena except through attorneys when necessary, until one rainy Thursday afternoon. Her receptionist appeared at the office door. "There is a man outside without an appointment." Lena looked up from a contract. "Name?" "He said you would know." She already did. Adrian waited near the windows in a dark shirt with the sleeves rolled to his forearms. No tie, no entourage. His hair was slightly longer, his jaw rough with stubble. For the first time since she had known him, he looked less like a mafia boss entering a room he owned, and more like a man uncertain whether he would be allowed to remain. Lena stepped into the reception area. "You came unannounced. You once told me appointments were for people afraid of hearing no. I said that about Roman. I improved it." She crossed her arms. "What do you want?" "Dinner. As a consultant?" "No." "As the woman who saved your life?" "No." "Then what are you asking?" Adrian looked at her without the protection of strategy, authority, or command. "I am asking as a man who loved you long before he had the courage to recognize what it was." Lena's expression softened, but she did not rescue him from the silence. "And if I say no," she asked, "I leave." His voice remained steady. "I remain grateful. And I never use what happened between us to make you feel that you owe me another answer." For several seconds, rain tapped against the windows. "One dinner," Lena said. Adrian released a breath. "One," she repeated. "No security detail inside the restaurant, no private dining room, and I choose the place." A faint smile touched his mouth. "You always did." "No. I am only beginning to." He opened the door for her, but he did not place a hand at her back. He waited until she chose to walk beside him. For 6 years, Lena Hart had been the quiet woman standing behind a powerful man. In the end, Adrian did not win her by rescuing her, rewarding her, or asking her to remain in his shadow. He earned the chance to walk beside her only after he learned how to let her leave. If you believe the quietest person in the room can become the most powerful, subscribe to Mafia Boss Destiny. The next story begins with a ruthless mafia boss, a chubby single mother, and the child who recognized his secret before either of them did.